Welcome back to New Amsterdam Radio, the podcast for creatives, thinkers, and doers. It is I, the mayor, Flobo Boyce, in the mayor's office, but I'm being joined by someone who's a mayor in their own right, because how I build a community for thinkers and doers, my guest does that for so many different flavors. He has a whole podcast network to talk about it. So please welcome Marc Cheatham to the show. Marc, let me ask you a question off the rip. How are you living, brother? How are you living?
I'm doing good, Flo. I'm doing good. It's the weather is changing a little bit here in Virginia, so I'm playing a little bit hurt. I'll sound a little bit more measured than I usually am, but I'm hyped, man. I'm excited to do this, and thank you for asking.
Usually I'll start off these interviews being like, take me back from the beginning, but I don't feel like doing that now because I want to tell you how we connected first on this
Sure.
grand post-pandemic internet web type deal. So I had on the episode of New Amsterdam, and long-term listeners can go back. I had an episode with Coach E, who is a baseball coach based out there in Chicago, and my friend Jason Storm, who was also on the show as an artist, we went to high school together, said, "Hey, you got to get my guy Chris Way on the show." And once I did both of those, all of my targeted ads were baseball for like a good 3 weeks. So the algorithm actually brought me to the Black Baseball Mixtape, which is where I first got into what you're about. So let me ask you this. What are you about, sir? If you had to put all the things you do in real life, on podcasting, in broadcasting to a night and night package, how would you describe what you do?
I think it boils down 100% to community, and community building is the best way to break it down. I've had platforms and websites now for a little bit over a decade. Most of those websites and platforms is really about bringing people together, bringing community together. And oftentimes I've found introducing Black culture and our people in our community into spaces and areas that don't necessarily often welcome Black culture and Black people in those spaces. So that's when I started what was called the Cheats Movement blog over a decade ago. And what it did was it built this community of arts, culture, music, particularly hip hop. And what we would do is we presented it in a way that was, as I think, for an individual independent blog, it was presented in a way almost as like this amazing news magazine, this amazing spot of culture. And we kept just building on that and introducing hip hop to places that never received hip hop before, and street art before. And we were kind of making this whole movement in Richmond, Virginia. And so as time has passed and you expand into different areas and you meet different people, it really turned into, how do we introduce culture to places that may not have had it before, and capitalize on that. And obviously the most recent thing that we've been doing a little under a year now is the Black Baseball Mixtape. And that was just a combination of being a baseball fan, looking for content that was geared and dedicated to my hip hop sensibilities, my Black culture sensibilities, and blending in with baseball. And the truth of the matter is, there's not a lot of platforms and spaces out there. So that was an opportunity for me to start a website, start an Instagram page, start a YouTube page from my home that really targeted Black culture community fans. And I want to be very careful because it's not just Black people. It's
Right.
people that are fans of hip hop, people that are fans of our culture, people that respect our culture, that want to learn more about Black baseball in general. And we put it in a contemporary form, and the rest has been history. And so far it's new, everything's new, but it's gone well, and it continues kind of the tradition of what I've always been about, which is bringing people together, introducing them to things introducing them to things and introducing them to spaces that may not have received our culture before.
You cover a lot of ground with that question. And what I liked about your brand is that was something I was thinking about. Full disclosure, New Amsterdam Radio is going to be split at one point, and it was going to have a baseball only discussion. But then seeing what your show was about, I was like, oh man, I can imagine to collaborate. And we do.
It's like, no, I don't want to foil your plan. We need more.
Oh no, we need more. But what I liked about yours the Black Baseball Mixtape platform, and I do get to contribute. So it's we combine like
Yeah.
Voltron,
We're
baby.
home team. We're home
Yeah,
team.
we're home team because you want to uplift each other. It doesn't try a certain form of the Black experience. It's kind of like a general thing. It's very welcome in that way. So my question I have for you is that, you're an educated brother. We're going to go through your backstory in the intro of the show. Is there kind of a pressure to present a certain flavor of Black culture to people who are not even existing that doesn't exist? You have to present yourself. Do you feel people have expectations when they hear the phrase Black Baseball Mixtape? Can you be yourself? How does the monolith look? I have all these questions there, Cheats.
Yeah. No, I don't feel too much pressure about it, but it's also I'm an adult.
Yeah.
I'm well into my 40s.
Nah, you're not.
It's not. Well, I was having a discussion about this with Steve Friend, who's the CEO of Stilo Sports, the other day, and we were talking about this, and we're like, man, isn't being an adult really cool? Because when you're playing and you're growing up and you're in your formative years, there is a lot of peer pressure. A lot of young Black baseball players even act like, I think he used the frame, living a double life, where he's got his baseball friends over here, which are usually all white, and then he's got his culture, like his real, not real, but culture friends, home base friends, which are often immersed in hip hop culture, immersed in Black culture, and really not checking for baseball. And so we were talking about this, and I said, man, isn't being an adult really cool? Because you get to a point in your life where you're like, this is it. This is me. And either you're going to come along with the ride or you're just not. And it's no hard feelings. We don't have to have beef about it. But this is who I am. This is how I'm presenting kind of this entity.
Yeah.
And so to answer your question more directly, I don't feel any pressure about how to present culture. Maybe one, probably because we're not big enough, but two, also it's really authentic to who I am and what I enjoy about baseball and what I enjoy about Black baseball. And as being a player, I was not a player at a high level. I stopped playing after my senior year of high school, but
Wow.
but I understand the game. I understand what a lot of the players are going through, and it's very easy for me to present, I think, Black baseball and culture in a way that is authentic, but also, widely received. And so, a last thing I'll say about this is, and I've also, well, like I said, we could talk about this as well. I've had 10 years of writing hip hop, writing street art, writing culture, where I would argue that there's more pressure in that arena
Mm-hmm.
to present a different level of the Black experience. And the cool thing about that was I was also an adult.
Yeah.
So I would have really good friends of mine, people that I've followed their whole careers. And if they presented a product that I personally did not agree with, I would not put it on my platform. I don't care how good of friends we were.
Right.
So I started to get that reputation in my community, in my hometown, and they understood that. It's kind of like if you want your song played on the radio, you got to edit it. You can't have a whole bunch of inappropriate language in it. Well, if you wanted your video, your song, your interview on my platform, it had to be presented a certain way. And, after a while, it was just another part of the culture. They had other outlets in our community that if they were looking for a certain element, whether it was drill, whether it was just, um, you know, a I would say a dangerous violence component or anything like that, they had other places to go for that. And
Mm-hmm.
so what I was able to present was who I was, and it's just kind of carried over into baseball. It's pretty much carried over into everything I do.
Yeah, and so the idea of this creative project, in fact, you talked about this on a podcast you were on fairly recently, back in 2020, the Randy Wilson podcast, about the difficulties of building and maintaining creative teams for projects. Sometimes if you're a lot more fluid, a lot more flux, it might be a little challenging of getting a whole group of individuals and perspectives to see a singular vision. What's that been like years removed from that discussion, but as you grow your platforms?
Lonely in many ways. In
I'm so
many
alone.
ways,
Yeah.
it. I understand though now where that no one's going to care about your vision as much as you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to knock anybody else, because they have their own path, they have their own vision as well. So it is very difficult to maintain a long stretch of shared vision. And we come from a podcast world, so we've seen Joe Button break up. We've seen just tons of entities that were, that kind of looked like they were forming like Wu-Tang, and then all of a sudden Wu-Tang goes a whole certain direction. Nothing wrong with that. I think things happen for a time in a season, but it is not easy. It is not easy. It's easier if you assert yourself as, if it's your vision and you want to assert yourself as the CEO or the founder, do it. I don't care how hesitant you are or how much you feel like you need help. It's a lot easier to say, this is my ship, this is what we're laying out and moving along. The challenge I think people run into is they start, products and entities with friends or collaborators and so forth. And there's these like ill-defined roles and definitions of where people fit into the organization. And then you have a situation where, Rory and Maul think they're partners and they're not partners, or, Brandon Marshall takes his, takes his I Am Athlete away from, Channing and it's a whole thing. So
Yeah.
I think it's difficult, but I also think it's easier if you kind of take ownership of your product and what you're doing.
So I guess that kind of leads me to the next question about the Family Podcast Network. I mean, it's a curated list of shows. I mean, what did that process look like? Was it kind of like a uniform idea, and then you look for shows and properties that fit that vision? Or was it kind of like, we want to have this platform that had these things to say, let me find content that dovetailed into that?
Yeah, I think it's probably a little bit premature, to be honest. Now that I'm looking back on it, it was one of those things where we had a handful of successful shows. I had a successful show. A couple of my buddies had a successful show, and we wanted to leverage unity. And that's how the Family Podcast Network came about. I do think it's real difficult starting a podcast network, in the sense, especially if your shows aren't independent running shows. And what I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that is, in order for you to even incentivize a network, you have to offer incentives. Some of those
Right.
incentives we offer the the Family Podcast Network, are great incentives. They're really good things. But what I found is the shows that are kind of up and running and almost independently operated, those are the ones that are going to be successful. The ones that are conceptual and you have to form, it takes a lot of time and energy. And obviously, I have a lot more respect now for people like P. Diddy. Somebody that was running Bad Boy and making albums is really hard.
Right.
And so I think running your own show and making a network, it's really difficult to provide the type of support that you need to do that. But it can be done. I do think the independent running shows are a little bit easier to manage. And to answer your question even more directly, when we came up with the idea of unity and sharing the wealth and building off the momentum of our successful shows, we just wanted content. There was no real, you know, screening process. We had a healthcare show on that ran across from a wrestling show, that ran
Right.
across from a hip hop show. It was just, we wanted content that we could leverage for monetization. And looking back on it, and like I said, moving forward, we'll probably narrow that focus a little bit more. But at the same time, I think it's a really good experience. I think it's something that ultimately down the line will probably continue to grow. It helps if you have shows that have followings and support already and backing, because at the very least you can leverage those numbers for monetization. So there's a
Yeah.
lot to it, but it's not easy. It's not an easy task.
So you're in Richmond, Virginia now, but
Yep.
are you a Virginian born and raised, or did you
Yep.
move
Born
out
and
there?
raised.
Or
Yep. Grew up,
so
lived down the street.
Okay,
Whole time.
so I had a question about this because you were recently on the 40 Lessons podcast with Todd B. Waldo, and you had gone so hard for Richmond. I was like, well, as someone from Brooklyn, I mean, it's a town you only hear much about. My bad. I'm sorry. Don't choke me out.
There's a
But
pipeline. There's like a Virginia, New
yeah,
York pipeline.
for cigarettes, maybe. I'm just kidding.
No, well,
I'm
that
just
too.
kidding.
But that is true. I got stories for days about that.
Yo, for real.
But there's a lot of New Yorkers here.
Yeah. But what made you decide to go so hard for your town? Is it because people don't put in the conversation, or it's because no, you love your city that much? Like, what was your spark being like? No, I'm gonna put the city on my back. I'm gonna create a project.
Yeah, no. Richmond is a place where it took a real long time for us to get like self-esteem. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of folks when I was growing up, wanted to get to a level where they could move out, like move out of town. Most people, we always found out they move out, but they always come back.
Right.
But yeah, probably, I don't know. It had to be probably about 10 years ago. We started seeing just a lot more self-esteem and pride being from our community and our hometown. And it kind of went in conduit with this movement, this growing arts movement, this growing hip-hop movement, this growing movement in Black culture that we were really proud of. And I do like to think that I was on a level of ground floor of that. And especially kind of what was a new wave at the time, pre-pandemic, we were on the ground floor of making Richmond a place where people wanted to come and wanted to be and wanted to see, and people were pleasantly surprised that all of these all these cool things were happening. And we were such a, and I say we because it was a big group of us. It wasn't just the Chiefs movement; it was a whole bunch of other things that were happening all at the same time. But we were such a pivotal part of that, and it made me so excited and proud to be a part of that. And yeah, we put a lot of Richmond on our back at the time, especially in the hip hop space. And
Yeah.
it was also it was a run. It was a run. Like everybody has a run.
Right.
And we had a run for about 4 or 5 years there where it was the place to be, the thing to do, and we ran with it.
Are they gonna name a park after you or something? A library? Like, what's going on? How are they gonna pay you
I
back?
doubt it. I doubt it. But it's a cool, for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit hard to put in perspective sometimes, and the interesting thing is it's so localized that it's a little weird for people outside of our community to fully grasp what we're talking about because it is so localized. So oftentimes when we were building these things and other people in other towns and other communities would get wind of it, they'd be like, man, can we have a cheats movement in, I don't know, Buffalo or Charlottesville or wherever? And I was like, probably not, because I'm not going to Buffalo. I'm not going to Charlottesville. I'm not going to, Charleston. I'm here. So
Right.
this is kind of where this movement is going to take place. Now, if you find another, lack of a better term, if you find another cheats and that person is homegrown and you put them in your town and you let them rock, they can build whatever their movement's going to be. And so that's kind of how we talk about it.
Got to keep the grassroots still with the grass. I get you. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't become like a you sold out situation or you've changed. You know what I mean?
But, you're gonna get that anyway.
Yeah, I mean for real.
You don't have to leave. You don't
you
have to
different.
Leave yeah, you don't have to leave town to get that. But you're gonna get that anyway. I think the only thing you can do because exposure is what makes that happen.
Mm-hmm.
If you get the more exposure you get, whether it's a larger platform or whatever, you can't take everyone with you. You just can't. So exposure gets to the point where people will be like, oh, either whether it's resentful or you feel like you're not moving the same, or you used to do this now and it could be something as little as you used to use this venue. There was a small venue in Richmond we used, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We outgrew that venue. So then you have to, because we sold out too much. So we have to go to a bigger venue. Well, that old venue is going to be like, you changed. You're not the same. We're not as underground as we used to be, because now you're and a 500 seater as opposed to a 150 seater, right?
Yeah.
But I'm sitting here looking at it like, oh, this is great because more people have access to what we're building. More people can see what we're doing. But yeah, you're going to get that no matter what.
I mean, I can only imagine selling out a theater for 500 tickets to see me someday.
No, it's not. Well, we got to be very careful.
Right.
I like when you say to see me, like, no, what we did was we put people on. It was not so anything that was run under the umbrella, and to this day is still run under the umbrella. It was not because of the podcast. No, it was because of a showcase or something we were doing for other people. That's how the whole thing worked. It had very little to do with the individual as much as it had to do with what the brand presented for other folks.
You know, you must have mentioned that because like 20 years ago, I was home in New York. I was into Angie Martinez back when she was on Hot 97, and they had some of the guys from Full Force, the group Full Force, and they had made a pact early in their careers, and it said it didn't matter if all of us wrote a song or one of us wrote a song, the credit will read Full Force, so everyone ate. So I like the fact that you keep that community aspect of it. That's how you make it authentic as you can. But besides all that, though, man, you do have a day job and you do have a family.
Yeah, I do.
The question, the stock podcasting question is, how do you balance it? But since it's New Amsterdam Radio, I got to ask you, what tools do you use to balance all of that? The family time, your day job time, and the Chiefs movement and other projects.
I think, honestly, you just cut out a lot of other stuff. No, seriously. Time is like, the only asset that you have that you're not going to get back, right? So there are certain things that I can do and there are certain things that I can't do with time. It's a big difference pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic. And what I mean by that was pre-pandemic, especially when I'll go back to that, like that stretch where we were, like I said, that 4 or 5 years where we were on a run. We had a lot of events, and a lot of those events were outside. This is all pre-pandemic. The home life was not as great as it is now. And I've got a loving wife and a young kid who's awesome. But it was like, oh, man, you got to go out and do this. You got to go out and do that. You got to go. So you would hear that. And it would obviously place a level of strain, not significant or anything like that. In other words, not being a team, but it did, looking at calendars every day was something we would do pre-pandemic. Post-pandemic, I'm not outside at all. It's a big difference. It's a big difference today than it was pre-pandemic. So now, like, when the world shuts down for a year and a half, 2 years, when it comes back different. I don't hear as much people say, oh, man, you need to do X. I hear a lot of, oh, where you been if I'm outside somewhere public. But a lot of what we do now is like this. You're on the West Coast and I'm at my house, and time management is a lot easier to do things. Whether it's, remote via Zoom, it's a lot more acceptable. It's a lot easier for scheduling. There's a whole lot of things that are better in regards to the media space post-pandemic and a lot more acceptable. Work is work, so you're going to go do the work things that you need to do. And family life, I am dedicated to being a really good husband and father, and I'm out there coaching Little League and doing those things. And you just make time for the things that are priority, and a lot of things really do have to be sacrificed or fall down the wayside.
I mean, that's something I've heard a lot about the time management thing, and with all due respect to the destruction the pandemic caused, a lot of creatives had that moment of shifting from a grinding mindset to a growth mindset. Kind of this idea of like, look, I can grind and go to all these venues and do things, but now I'm focused on making progress, and that's kind of cool that you're able to do that in your own way and find it in your own time. I think I always compare it to like a race, like a NASCAR or F1 race. That was like a giant, like
we love
like
F1.
We love it. Exactly. Shout out to Mercedes, man. But it doesn't feel like it was like a safety car situation for 2 or 3 years. It'd be like, hey, what's important? What isn't important? What strategies? Are you changing tires? Are you not? And I think also for me personally, I came out better for it because I wasn't a podcaster until I was a comedian saying, stay home. You're not important. You're not essential. How are you going to put this voice somewhere? So I respect that for sure. But as we record this, it's well into 2023. Back halves on the horizon. What do you want to accomplish? What's next for the movement?
The Black Baseball Mixtape is probably my top priority now, and just growing that and cool. It's hella fun. It's like the funnest. It's the most fun I've had in a media space, and definitely the last since pandemic. Yeah, so the last 3 years, it's the absolute most fun, and it's something I didn't think was going to be as fun or a real thing. Like, you start these things with ideas, and you don't know how it's going to turn out, but it's for someone that had a platform, has a podcast still in Richmond that took 10 years to build. I feel like I put 10 years of lessons into, 6-7 months into the mixtape, and we're better off for it. Like the opportunities and the output and the construction of the mixtape is literally a lifetime of work, doing other things and failing and not being as successful. So I'm really, really excited about where a platform dedicated to Black baseball that's presented in a way that hip hop culture understands, to present to people in a way that I think they can easily receive it. I'm excited to see where that opportunity can go within the game and within the media space, and where we ultimately end up. And so that's exciting for me.
I gotta say that from my perspective, just seeing the small growth of when I was cognizant of the mixtape is crazy. Now it is interesting because you have the IG lives, and I get to hang on, like, oh my gosh, backstage pass. But the A show, sitting with some of the luminaries of the sport.
Look, it's not an A show.
No, that's exactly what it is. You're like, yo, I got an interview with Bob Kendrick. Y'all see you on Monday.
I like that. That's funny. We're too deep into the wrestling world
exactly
to understand.
No, I get that, and to be able to do that, and I guess the sweet spot for me, and it's not so much with New Amsterdam Radio, it's kind of a passion project. But I had a late night show during the pandemic on a small scale. It's called After Hours.
I saw it was it was very curated.
Oh yeah, thank you.
The background, the lighting, you were at a nightclub.
Yeah, it was a nightclub. That's really what it was. That was my dream, was to bring back late night variety. So not so much late night talk, but Sábado Gigante or Saturday Night's Takeaway, Monday nights 10 o'clock after Raw. I would do the show, and going back with some of the episodes, seeing it grow, seeing the backgrounds change. And for me, my linchpin moment is when I got Ariana Maddox from Vanderpump Rules on the show. Yeah, but she went to the same college I went to. So to me, she was just Ariana from theater class. But she became this big deal. So I guess seeing from my point of view, having someone like a Bob Kendrick on your show, I was like, you go Cheats, you get that dude. You get more people, get Tony Regans and all. Is there anyone else on that list that you just like, I got to get them now?
I made a list on January 1, 2023. I did the Cody Rose. I made a list of all the people I wanted to work with. I took a picture of it, and I posted it on Instagram and on Twitter. And so that I literally did that. You can go back. I used to have it pinned to the top. I think I've unpinned it down, but I have a list. And sometimes I show people that list, especially if I'm close to getting someone that's on that list. I'll show them the list and be like, hey, look, this is January 1. You've been on my list the whole time. I'm not making this up. I'm not fronting.
Just in DMs.
Yeah, mostly emails and DMs. Yeah, I'm really good at research.
Respect.
I'm really good at research. I'm really good at figuring out how to get to. One thing I do know from podcasting, from working in politics and working in government on my day job, you gotta ask the right person. So that's the other thing. You gotta ask the right person to come on the show. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes, depending on what level you're at and who you're trying to get on the show, The principal itself is not the right person to ask, because the
Right.
principal, the person you want on the show, will be like, yes, I'd love to do your show. Then they have to go back and see, talk to the scheduler, talk to the comms director, talk to whoever. And all of these people are going to be like, what? No. Like, never. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And so my strategy has always been ask the right person as best you can. And even if that's so and here's a gem or a tip, or for anybody that's trying to book guests. If you do get to the principal, simply because that's the only person that you can DM, or that you don't know who their assistants are, and so forth, you don't ask the principal, will you come on the show? You ask the principal, who do I need to email to make a proper media request? Who is the person that handles your schedule? And I will be I'd love to have you on, but I don't want to bother you. Who do I talk to? And they'll be like, oh, hit so and so and so and so. In the world of baseball, which is where we're operating with a mixtape, oftentimes that person is the agent.
Right.
So I could hit a player up in the DM, and instead of being like, hey man, I'd love for you to come on my show, I'd be like, hey man, I love what you're doing. Hey, can you let me know who reps you? Who's your agent? I'd love to make an ask for you to come on the show. And
Yeah.
they'll often be like, oh yeah, that's the person, right?
Is
Doesn't
that
always work.
it's like a
Doesn't
mind
always
game
work.
too? Is it kind of like he's asking my agent? Nah, it's just me, brother. Does that ever happen when someone
Yeah,
just
all the
goes,
time. All
okay,
the
okay.
time. They'll be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you don't need to go to my agent. Just here's what we need." But by that point, you're where you are. And some people, like I said, especially if they're rep by big firms, certain times you have to go through that. Sometimes it's we're in a interesting place as well with sport, where every major league and minor league team has comm directors. They have
Mhm.
It's awesome. So especially if you're trying to get a prospect or somebody that's younger in the game, well, you just email. Everybody's available in the front office of either a minor league or major league team. So you'll ultimately get to the right, director of comms at a double A affiliate and say, "Hey, I'd love to have so and so on our podcast. This is what we do." Um, and usually that also works out. So agents, comm directors. So again, sometimes the principal is really great and be like, "Hey, I'd love to come on. Let's just make it shake." Um, but there's many aspects. There's a lot of no's. I get a lot of yeses. I'm really pleased about that. I really do. And the mixtape gets a lot of yeses, but there's a lot of no's as well. There's a lot of not right now. Completely understand. You never take anything personal in that sense. You can't, because half the
Mhm.
time the principal doesn't even know. They don't even know who said yes, who says no. I do say you stay persistent. I've got a couple of really exciting emails that I've gotten responses to, but we haven't got them scheduled. That could go 2 or 3 weeks, 4 weeks without hearing back. So you follow up. To answer your question directly, today, Dana Brown from the Houston Astros is someone we're in talks with to come on the show. That'd be really exciting, being that he's the only black general manager in baseball right now.
Mhm.
That's a good one. Brandon Bellamy is the only black owner of a baseball franchise, and it's an independent baseball club in
What's
Gastonia, North Carolina.
the Honey Badgers?
The
No.
Honey Badgers, yep.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
okay.
we're in talks with Mr. Bellamy's team to get him on the show. The other thing that has worked for me in my entire life, whether it was hip hop, whether it was, culture, community, or so forth.
I'll be cut you off here. It's the Gastonia Honey Hunters. Double check it.
Honey
Okay.
Hunters. Oh, you
Yeah.
get good call. Good call.
Yeah.
The product you present is the product that people will see, and they will base their decisions on whether they want to be a part of what you're doing based off of the product you present.
Mhm.
So the biggest thing that I can do to convince people to be a part of the mixtape or help the show is just show them the show. Show them the Instagram page, show them the Twitter, show them the YouTube. If you see it and you don't want to be a part of it, there is nothing I can do. But if
Fair.
you see it, and to our credit, I think most people, when they see it, they're like, "Oh wow, this is good. This is
Yeah.
great. This is dope. I want to be a part of it." If they see an interview with one of their friends, one of their colleagues, one of their coworkers, we get more. I get more DMs and requests for people to be on the show after we post something new than in any other point, because somebody sees somebody else was on the show and they're like, oh man, how can I be on the show? How do I make this happen?
Yeah. That is invaluable advice for those of us in the podcast space. Do you understand, Ray, the podcast for creators? Before I get you out of here, you know how it is. You've been a podcaster, host forever. Those rapid fire questions. We're going to do things a little bit different. Again, you can always pass, but why would you, Mark?
I'm an open book.
All right. Number one, on the Source and Co podcast, you said you were a Knicks fan. What other sports teams are you a fan of?
Yeah, Knicks is diehard since the Mellow days.
Crazy.
Orioles and Nationals, more Orioles if my heart, if you had to force me to pick one, but I'm local. So I grew up in Virginia. Orioles were our local television region network, HTS, back in the day. And so my first major league game was Old Memorial Stadium. I went, and saw Ken Griffey Jr. play in Camden Yards. So the Orioles, I didn't have a National League team, so I adopted the Nats when they came from Montreal to Washington, just because they're close. My son's been to more Nationals games than Orioles games. Washington Commanders and that history, because I was local. I'm a mark for the Commanders.
Do you like the name Orioles. Commanders, or you're more of a football team fan?
What's that?
Were you a fan of the Commanders name, or are you football?
No, I'm all right with it. I'm all right. I got used to football team, and we're big. My son is really big into football, if you will, the global game.
Right.
And so once it got to football team, I was like, yeah, it's kind of hot. It reminds me of global football, but nah, Commanders is fine with me. If they win, this is the thing. Winning heals all. If they win, no one's going to care about what the team's name. They're going to be all on the bandwagon if they win. As long as they're tolling in the lower bottom half of wherever they are, that's different. But yeah, my Knicks fandom is the highest. Hopefully this year the Orioles do something.
Wow, you didn't know? I didn't know that. For me, I'm a Nets fan, but I will say I was a Knicks fan until the Spreewell years when they went to the finals and got destroyed. So I walked away from basketball altogether. I think that's fair.
No,
I walked away from I walked away from basketball. So you know what? I'm going to follow players, but
that's not. You had a good team. The Houston Spreewell teams.
Yeah,
I wish I had those teams.
I sold out though. My friend had floor tickets to Barclays, and I was like, they built an arena where I got my mixtapes. This is great.
All right. I mean, they got to get fans somehow.
Oh yeah, I got you. Yeah. What is your favorite junk food?
Oh, sweets. I'm a sweets guy, and I'm off of it. I've been off of it for 2 weeks now, a week and a half, 2 weeks. No, it's not good. It's all kinds of. You get to a certain age, and your body tells you got to change some things in your diet, and so I'm on this. I'm on a diet change, a lifestyle change, if you will. But yeah, I'm there's not a sweet that I really didn't like, and so
I've cake, candy,
all of it, cake, candy, pie. I was bad off. So I was big into Coke Zeros. I thought I was living a better life with Coke Zeros, but it was the worst addiction that I've had in a long time. So all of that stuff was bad, and hopefully, knock on wood, it really is like a recovering addict for me. It's one day at a time. Not being able to drink soda and eat sweets, because I really love them. And carbs, I'm off carbs.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest health nut or religious person, but I do practice Lent sometimes, and so I usually forego processed sugars. So I'm on week 5, going like, man,
I got to talk to you, because you're the one that you've had a real transformation with how you've gone about eating and exercising and so forth. It's one of those things where when it hits you, man, and you're trying to figure out what's going on, and you're like, bro, like you gotta change something. So I'm not diabetic. I'm not type 2 diabetic yet. It runs in my family. It was a you're getting that pre-diabetic limits. You're getting those high cholesterol limits, and I felt okay. But when you start to not feel okay, and you're going to the doctor, and they're like, hey, look, this is the best thing we can tell you to do. It's not like they pinpointed this is the problem. Yeah. But they were like, this will hopefully give you more energy and we're talking about, we got a lot to do.
That's a problem talking about the black community is that
Yep.
because traditionally we earn less than our white counterparts. I'm making a political show now. Because we try to make ends meet, we tend to like equate love with providing. So mom and
Sure.
dad work hard to put food on the table. You honor them by eating it, and that's a very dangerous thing for me going to college, having three
Sure.
buffet meals a day. And so that's why I was really heavy there. But yeah, it is. You do feel it, and sometimes you deny it, but then your body's like, yeah, you're not 21 years old anymore.
Yeah, you got it. I
Uh,
mean, it's a change. I'm not gonna say it's easy, but it is. Every day. It's not one of those things for me because everybody will tell you, "Oh, it'll get easier." It has not gotten easier. I don't like green tea. I don't
mhm.
like so it's like there's all of these things that I'm trying to do that I don't enjoy, but I do know that hopefully 1 week comes into 1 month and those types of things. And you keep going. I did want to say too, and I know you have uh I know hopefully you have more rapid fire questions and we'll get into these things. But I did want to say that there's a whole element to those that cheats movement 10-year days that was very actually political as well.
Mhm.
Um and hip hop in many ways, hip hop culture started alongside this grassroots political activism counterculture movement that I think in many ways the Cheats movement had a hand in
Yeah.
and a spirit in. And so what happened towards the end, we talked about like how it started versus where it was in many ways. And we'll talk about like teams and divisions within a team. We started originally as a pure hip hop music show. It was
Mhm.
a Stretch and Bobbito version that happened in Richmond, Virginia. And we had a lot of, and that's Bobbito Garcia is somebody that I consider the GOAT and somebody I've had the pleasure of interviewing more than once. Um, but I have such high regard for what he has been able to create in his life. But I looked at his blueprint and was like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do the Stretch and Bobbito show in Richmond, Virginia. And it worked. What I found out was, and a little bit, this might coincide a lot of what happens with the mixtape. We got to a certain point where we were kind of the thing in Richmond community hip hop, but it also turned into the thing in Richmond community for Black people to be at a space. And by doing that, I heard more about education, more about community safety, more about policing, more about all these things. And I decided, based off of who I was, that we have to say more. We have to do more, and it can't just be about who dropped the latest album.
Right.
And so that is a little bit of where we went from a late night kind of podcast that turned into a radio show. The radio show was much more daytime culture talk. We talked about a lot more different things, and it was like this whole thing. And ultimately, one day, we'll see if this happens because baseball is such a focal point and a lightning rod. But I found myself getting more engagement, more comments, more things happening outside of music. Um, at one point with especially the second half of the Cheats movement, and it still probably runs that way today. Now it's we'll see where the baseball stuff goes. I mean I really think it's a really good focus, but ultimately when you get a bunch of our community together, they're going to talk about a whole bunch of different things as well,
Yeah.
and we'll figure out how to place those things. But yeah, there's an element to what we've done that was way more just beyond kind of the norm in the music, and I think that's what made it great, but also ultimately made it a real challenge to maintain.
Oh, absolutely. My short run in political office
You
definitely
ran
was
for
a
office. I read that.
yeah. What a mistake that was. Never doing that again. What the hell was I thinking? But I totally with you. But actually, I was going to mention Stretch and Bobito in my next question. In your opinion, who was your mixtape guys growing up? Like, what mixtape did you buy? Were you a K Slay person? DJ Screw? Clue?
Yeah. No, K Slay was my guy. Clue
Drama
was my
King.
guy. Yeah, I was a little bit Stretch and Bobito live was I was not checking for that live. Like
Yeah.
when that run was, I've gone back, listened to a lot of their tapes, understand what they meant to the culture, what he meant, still does. But by the time I was really, getting mixtapes, it was K Slay and Clue that were at the top. Then after that, it was Drama.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Gangsta Grills, right?
Drama's great. Like Gangsta Grills
Yeah.
are great. Like that Dead Prez Gangsta Grill still gets heavy rotation in my ride all the time. There's everybody talks about the Lil Wayne stuff, but the Dead Prez Gangsta Grill and the Pharrell Gangsta Grill are two
Yeah.
of the best mixtapes I've ever heard. Period.
The Goody Mob one is kind of a nostalgic one for me, but that's
Yeah.
that's nothing here nor there.
That's a good one.
What is Cheats doing a day off? Do you believe in days off?
Yeah, no, man. I take more days off than most.
People don't. People are like, I grind every day. 4 a.m. wake.
No. I take more days off than people know. I sleep a lot. I enjoy it. But nah, man, I got an 8-year-old son. I got a wonderful wife. And so as much as I'm able to spend doing things with him, spending time with the little man, he's real cool. He's real funny. And my wife is great. So yeah, I mean, it's mostly it's mostly family time.
I got one more for you. How many hats are in your collection, and where do you keep them?
Too many, all over. They're too many, and they're all over. I haven't
100, 200?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, more. Yeah, it's deep. It's deep, and it's gonna get deeper. They just released some new like City Connect stuff, MLB wise, that I'm gonna get. I'm a huge minor league guy, so I'm gonna need a lot of minor league hats, Negro League hats. It started with the Negro Leagues.
Okay.
It started with the because I used to be a sneaker collector, and that got too expensive. Now hats are just as expensive as sneakers. But when it started for me, it was sneakers. It was heavy into sneakers, and then I kind of converted from hats to sneakers when there was a real hat movement a couple years back, really during the pandemic. Hats really took off, side patches and under brims and all kinds of stuff. So I was like, I'm getting in on that. And man, yeah, it's been a journey. I love it. I wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's dope, man. This one, the one I have on now, I don't know if you can see it. It's like the Spike Lee Do the Right Thing.
Oh, I didn't see the patch. Yeah,
it's amazing. Yeah.
So here's I love it. I think I had like 20. Now I drop in the bucket until I was like, "Oh, this guy's a hat every single week." Like,
it's a problem. I got hats and from like Negro League collection, like box sets and stuff that I've never even put on my head. Like I never even opened.
Is it like shoes where you have to wear them when they fall apart too, or how does that even work if you don't wear them?
Nah, I mean I got them, so I know if I need them, I got them. No, it's not like that. It's not like that. I got shoes that I don't wear. Right, I got shoes that I don't wear. I got shoes that I'm not really a flipper. I've only sold like 2 pairs. I've never sold a hat, and I've only sold 2 pairs of shoes in my life. And one was the Travis Scott lows because I got them for $130 and they were going for nearly $1,000. I was like, I gotta sell. This is ridiculous. It's family neglect if I don't sell those. And then I sold the Rockefeller Air Force Ones.
Oh,
because I had a icy clean white pair of that I never. It was one of those things. I'll tell you this. You'll like this. It's a pair of shoes that I was never gonna put on my feet because nowhere you could go if you wore them once, you were done. Right. So it's like there's never an event in my mind that I was like worthy of me wearing these. So I'm either just gonna sit there and look at them, or I can sell them and just be done with me looking at them. So I don't even know if I made that much of a profit on them. I just sold them because I really was like, there's no way, there's no event that I was gonna wear them to because they were just that cool to me.
So when we're going to see the YouTube video of the collection, bro? Like, if you guys as many as you say you have hats, I mean, when's it going to be the cribs?
Well, one, everything's relative, right? You put everything in perspective. What I mean by that is, especially now, the hat game is so sick. You can go on like IG and just see they do these hat battles, and they do all like people. So they got things that I have never even like. There's no way I could get. I'm not waiting in line for it. There's no assist that's going to get it for you. Like they got things in some of these collectors that is just beyond the world. I like to think of myself as a working man collector. What I mean by that is I'll get a dope hat. I'll wear the hat. Like, I don't have a lot of panic hats. And what I mean by that is a panic hat, as soon as they drop, they're gone. And if you don't have an assist or you're not waiting in line for 5 days, you're not going to get it.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of panic hats. I've only used an assist. I use an assist for this hat because I really wanted. I have a love for baseball history and Jackie. But what I very rarely. I mean, IGs for assists, which means like you pay double the price just to get somebody to wait in line and ship it to you.
Yeah. No, I respect that. I hear I'm complaining like about a new era drop, but this is like a whole different rabbit hole.
No, it's a whole different. Like these are like these side shops in New York or LA. It's got a lot of them. Midwest has got a lot of them where it's like they have these special new era licenses, so they can kind of create their own hats based off of what New Era allows them to do, and it's insane. I mean, I love it. I've interviewed a couple guys in the hat world that kind of put me on to some game. I always think, you tell me if you make this mistake. I do make this mistake often.
Okay.
I will interview a person on our show, and then in my mind, we're best friends.
Yeah. No, I mean, because you get to know them, you research them. Bro, I have so much research about you, bro. Like, I get it.
In my mind, we are truly best friends. Like, we are like, if I saw you in the street, you're going to like invite me to your house and have dinner.
Yeah.
Like, we would do that to each other. But I'm saying, like, most people, you got to realize are like, no, they do like 50 interviews. They do interviews all the time. They could care less about, like, in my mind, I'm best friends with you now. Like, me and Bob Kendrick are going to like kick it someday.
Oh, yeah, you will, though.
but that, that's so I had a bunch of hat guys that I've talked to, and every once in a while I'll text them. That's another I know we're gonna break here or leave here, but that's another piece of advice I'll give folks that are cultivating these types of things. In order to get some things that you may want, you have to be willing to give things as well.
True.
One of the things I give out to just about anybody that cares to listen, I'll give you my cell phone in a minute. I haven't changed my cell phone since I was 16 years old. I will give you my cell phone and tell you to text me, call me, whatever. If you know what, and you know what usually happens, which is a hilarious thing. Like, most people will be like, "Oh no, man, I'll lock you in. Like, I'm locked in." So I may never use it. I'm not the type of person that's going to abuse that type of information. Yeah. So I may never use it. But my cell phone has so many names and contacts and text messages from people that I've only met once, only interviewed through. But if I ever needed to text so and so, I may have something that people may not have. But I think in order to get that, you often have to be the first one to be like, "Hey, look, bro, like, lock me in. Here's my thing." That's a tip, because a lot of folks, and it's a tip that I've seen from people really, really people that you don't think are accessible, like inaccessible people. Yeah. One of the ways that they either seem accessible, even if they're not, one of the ways that inaccessible people seem accessible or seem like normal people is like, they'll just be like, here's my phone number. Like, I'm here's my regular guy.
Call
they
me
may
up,
never. Yeah, it's a pro tip. It's a pro tip.
Yeah, it's good to know, man. Like, just basically shoot your shot, double down on something you believe in, and watch it grow. Mark, thanks so much for being on the show, man. I mean, the nuggets of wisdom are super valuable. If someone's listening right now and they want to connect with you or get your cell phone number, how do they go about doing that?
Right now, like, my DMs are not mismanageable. So if you're on Instagram or Twitter, you can just direct message me. That's probably the best way to hit me up.
What's your handle?
Oh, what is it? Black Baseball Mixtape, right? It's B-Ball Mixtape on Twitter, Black Baseball Mixtape on Instagram. Yeah.
It's just, yeah. All right, bam.
Yeah, that's it.
And when you go on tour, call me, man. I'll be an open act. Why not?
No, please. I had to figure out. We should, one of these days we'll reverse the camera, because ladies and gentlemen, for full disclosure, I'm about halfway through graduation day, the memoir of the mayor. So you can make sure you can buy that
Oh wow!
anywhere it's available, and you can read a lot about the mayor of New Amsterdam.
Just all my L's in one book.
It's a good read. I enjoy reading it.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate the free plug, man. We should have you on later on when the Black Baseball Mixtape has its own media outlet and get a licensing deal with MLB proper. But until that day, this is you, Amsterdam Radio, the podcast for creatives. We out.